was raised in the world of Web 1, went to high school and college in Web 2, and more recently have found myself not only immersed, but fascinated daily by the people I meet via Web 3, NFTs, and the Metaverse. The Metaverse especially is maturing seemingly weekly as more and more funding is allocated towards the space. Citibank has high expectations for the Metaverse, with its analysts projecting the Web3 economy to reach up to $13 trillion in valuation by 2030. The Metaverse has the potential to seamlessly blend the physical and digital world in an immersive way like we've never really seen before. And one of the key challenges to ensure that the Metaverse flows is making sure we, as the Metaverse participants, are able to express ourselves and maintain our physical world identities through motion, as we do in real life. And for this episode, I can't think of a better guest to discuss how we will move in the Metaverse than Remco Sikkema. Remco and I met on LinkedIn, where his daily posts are an impressive window into how the Metaverse will incorporate our human movement into AR, VR, and/or MR spaces. Remco is the senior marketing manager for Movella and Xsens and really finds himself on the forefront of movement technology, which will ideally allow all interested parties to one day move freely and uniquely in AR, VR, and/or MR spaces in the Metaverse. I'm Jarrett Carpenter, and this is More Than Blockchain. Remco, welcome to More Than Blockchain. How are you doing?
I'm good. On the other side of the ocean. How are you doing?
I'm well on this side of the ocean. I am actually out of Massachusetts, so about 20 minutes outside of Boston. So I'm as close as you can get to the old world, I guess, if this is the new world. So yeah.
Right. Well, I'm like an hour away from Amsterdam, because that's what most people know if you talk about the Netherlands. So that's where I'm at.
Very cool. And we met through LinkedIn. I have become more active on LinkedIn in the last 6 months as I continue to go down deeper in the rabbit hole of Web3, I guess you could say. And LinkedIn and Twitter are really where I'm finding a lot of community, and it's really where I've met a lot of people that have actually come on the pod. I think you had said that you listened to the episodes with Nick Widmer, Zach, and Bonjan, and I met Zach and Nick through LinkedIn. So here we are, full circle. Now I'm talking to you, and we're going to talk about a bunch of different stuff, which I think really focuses more on the Metaverse. But before we get into that, tell me about how you got to this part in your career. And I've listened to some other stuff, so I kind of have an idea, but I'd be interested to know how Remco goes from Web 1 and now we're into Web 3. What does that professional and personal trajectory look like?
Well, it's funny that you asked, because I think I started my career at Web 1, and it was like in 1996. You know, I don't know if I don't know what your age is, but I'm 50 years old now. And when I started my career, I was really into internet. You know, it was the day that it was still like 14K4 modems that were there. If you started your internet, it was like, you know, before you could go get on. And then after that, I don't know if it's in America the same, but we started with analog, and then the ADSL came. And after the ADSL, there was like fixed lines. So I went into a career of internet with fixed lines. So, and that is like typical Web 1. So companies, they had like a server, and then there was the internet, and there was a line in between, and that's what I sold. So that's where I started. And I started surfing the internet because it just got there, and I came across something that's called a weblog, which is like, nowadays it's quite normal, but it was like a page where people just dropped links that they found, and they made like an interesting conversation around it, mostly humoristic. So that's where I started. And the funny thing is, that whole vibe back then, you know, the whole, like, this is new, this is something different, you know, it's creative. You know, I find this same stuff now also in the NFT world, you know, in the Metaverse world. It's new, it's creative, you know, people are on the beginning of something new. And that same vibe was back then, and it's now again. So it's like we talked about the full circle. So it's like a circle again. It's like a wave coming back and forth, and it's coming up again for me. So it's really interesting. So that's where I started. And then, well, I think, so at the beginning of the lockdown, I started checking out LinkedIn, and I noticed, there's something going on there. It's hitting. There's people that are thriving. You see a lot of comments. There are people sharing value. Sharing different stuff, different than the normal. This is my corporate link that I want to share. Different than check out this release that we had. And I started diving into it. And I'm a marketing manager at the company that I work in. So I started diving into it like, there's something new here that I need to dive into. So I did, and I connected with a lot of marketing people. And while doing that and started also sharing about marketing, I actually came across a lot of Web3 and NFT and Metaverse content, because they are also sharing, this whole community is very active. So I came across it and I thought, this is really cool, because it's really close to me. I'm a gamer, from back in the days. I like online content. I like marketing. It all came together in this new Web3 metaverse kind of world. So that's where I deep dived into it and said, okay, this is something that I need to find out more about, and I did, and somehow it evolved. And I absorbed so many information and so many cool people that I connected with. And now I'm here, I'm doing podcasts and I'm talking about the metaverse. And it's not my job or anything, but I like it. It's kind of a really cool subject to talk about and to be in. And like I said, the community is also really, really interesting. They're creative. They like to share, everything that they're doing. They're also in the beginning, so you can make faults. You can do whatever you want actually, and see, where it's at. So I really like it.
It's interesting the way that you just described the metaverse or the Web3, the newer technologies, and the idea that you can kind of create something out of nothing. And it's so early and so nascent that it's like, yeah, please fail. Fail early, fail often. Not like the very cliche, I think, idea of like a motivational speaker, like you got to go out and fail. But it's like, we're taking baby steps here. And if you've ever seen a baby try to walk, there's a lot of failing. But there's a quick pickup, and then you learn the baby learns super quickly. And I feel like that's kind of where we are with Web3 in this world. And you had actually posted this morning, I think, on LinkedIn, and I'm going to probably butcher this, but it was a fascinating case study in failure by an NFT project, which essentially ran into a technical glitch that allowed, I think the number was $24 million to be basically locked up or lost to the ether, literally, in Ethereum. And so it does feel like the movie Tron, where he's just like, yeah, we're on the cutting edge of creation. We can do whatever we want. And in getting ready for this, I was looking at a lot of this stuff that Movella is doing. And there was just thinking about the metaverse and movement, it seems like when you go to work, there are no boundaries. There are no limits. And I say that because maybe people that are listening to this aren't in Web3 and aren't in the metaverse. They're not going to work where there maybe aren't any boundaries, but I feel like where you are, there aren't. And so when you're in you got your marketing role on and you're with Movella and you're thinking about how am I going to share this information, what boundaries do you come up against? Because it seems like the only boundary must be the communication of the idea.
Indeed, and it's funny that you picked up on this, because I work indeed for Movella. We haven't introduced Movella yet, but it's a company that is into motion, and one part of it is a motion capture suit. So we have a suit. If you wear it, it mirrors your emotions into a digital version of you. So it makes a digital twin on the screen. So we're really into making humans digital. All these avatars that you see now. That's our business actually. And so what I told you, I'm into to LinkedIn. Then I'm into Web3 and Metaverse, and I was already into this subject. And then our executive team actually came up with, okay, metaverse is an interesting market to be in. So let's connect with this market and see, what our place is in this market. And naturally, they came to me because I'm already into this. So it kind of came together at that right moment. So they wanted to explore the metaverse. They have one, colleague, me, that's already into it. So they let me go and see, what it could bring. And at the same time, they didn't give me any boundaries. It's like, okay, get yourself out there, make yourself valuable, see how you can connect, Xsens or Movella to the metaverse. And here we are. And along the way, a lot of concepts also triggered in my head because, I'm a marketing manager. I have a creative side, and I like the job that I work with. The whole motion thing in the metaverse, and I started, thinking about, what does motion bring, in the metaverse? What is the value of motion in the metaverse? And so a lot of little concepts, started popping up, and it's interesting to see that it also resonated with the people that are into metaverse or into this subject. And this is where I'm at now. So I feel that the motion that's now in the metaverse is kind of flat. If you talk to like we are now talking to each other, we have a lot of nodding. I understand you, and it's. I feel bored or I feel not, we're connecting or we're not connecting. You notice it immediately. But if we were an avatar, we wouldn't have that. There's like a lot of communications get stuck. So, and motion is a big part of me. You don't have video yet, but you would see me. I'm normally, quite talkative with my hands. So that's like a big portion of my communication. So I think that's where a lot of things can progress, in the metaverse, because it's still, on the low side.
When we were originally messaging, you had said something, and I'm just going to quote. You said, my niche or my main focus is how motion will make the difference in the future metaverse. And maybe now is the time, and I feel like I put the cart in front of the horses, and that's all on me as the podcast host here. But maybe you can talk about how Movella and how you are trying to do that. I think you're going to be a pretty big player in how motion happens in the metaverse, and maybe you can talk about how. And once again, I know per some other stuff I've heard, there's NDAs and there's other stuff, but you guys have had your hands or your motion print, and we can get into that too, in Marvel, in big movies. In, most people who are going to listen to this have probably seen the movie Black Panther. So they can start to maybe align with how this could all work. But what is Movella trying to do for the future of the metaverse when it comes to motion?
So we're called Movella. We have a product called Xsens MVN. So it's a motion capture product, and Xsens MVN has been around since 2016. And the whole technical product has already been around since 2000. So we're pretty long in there. And we have powered, as we say, a lot of these great movies. I love Marvel. You don't see it, but I have even a poster in my bag about from the Infinity War. So most of the Marvel films that you would see are probably powered by Xsens motion capture. Not all of them are public because, there's indeed, like you said, NDAs, and they're not giving everything away. But, like Black Panther, like Iron Man, there's films out there that are known, that are, they have Xsens motion capture animations in them. So there's also, lately there was a film called Finch. It's I don't know if you have seen it. So it was on Apple TV. It's with Tom Hanks, and he's playing like a guy who's in a catastrophic world. I think he's the only one left, and he has got a robot. And he's living together with this robot. It's a really interesting movie, and this robot is fully done by Xsens. So it's a motion capture. It's a guy in a suit, and then on top of him is a robot being plastered, as you could say. So it's our technology is in films, but it's also in games. FIFA, a lot of FIFA games have Xsens technology in. Ubisoft is a customer of ours. So all the most big game studios, they have an Xsens suite. So we're pretty embedded in the entertainment world, on the film side, on the visual effects side, and on the game development side. So yeah, that's where we have our place. And now with the metaverse coming up, which is also actually like the extension of gaming, I would say. So it's a natural place for us to be in. The same guys that developed games are now developing metaverse virtual worlds, with avatars in it. It's mostly even the same platforms that you're talking about. We're talking about Unity, we're talking about Unreal. Those kind of platforms are now the basis of many of these virtual worlds. And our technical integration with these worlds or these platforms, they're there for years already. I just posted something about Unreal Engine 5. We just have a plugin, updated on this. So it's a natural place for us to be in.
Yeah, I was reading on the website, and once again, we're focusing a lot on Movella, but I really want to hear this through the lens of Remco, through you, because I think a company is really just the sum of its parts, and so each individual will really add. And in a company like Movella, I'm sure you're bringing your passions, and your personal passions and your professional expertise to this. So like hearing that you're into Marvel must come full circle, that now you're working for a company that is hand in glove with making sure that like Black Panther looks as awesome as it did, or Iron Man, or I'm gonna have to see this movie that you're talking about, Tom Hanks, because when you talk about it, you're like, okay, Tom Hanks lost in a world with another character. I mean, that just sounds like Castaway. So I'm interested. I'm interested to see the parallels. But this thing maybe is now more sentient, and it's not just old volleyball. But I'll have to check that out and be
Now
sure
it's a real robot, a real person, and this person also has a real personality, and that's the beauty of motion capture. You can bring personality to something that's digital, and that's, well, then we come back to motion being a part of communication.
Yeah, and on that, I think it's really important. So much of language is, I think it's like they say 75% is nonverbal. So it's your hands, it's your gestures. You can say so much with your face. We've all gotten an eye roll, we've all given an eye roll, and these are really, really important things in language. And how does like I'm trying to understand how this will kind of come together in the metaverse. And I think we're maybe thinking years ahead, but it's like you need a headgear to also go with the suit so you can be fully immersed in XYZ world, right? And
Mm-hmm.
so you guys are just focusing on the bodysuit. Are you also doing headgear, or are you in the future going to probably align with somebody? And here's more context on that. I have an Oculus, and I bought an Oculus in February, and most people don't know this, first time saying this, I actually just returned it because I was getting dizzy. And I would put this thing on, and somewhere after 30 to 40 minutes, I would just get dizzy. And I would have to take it off, and I would honestly almost get nauseous. And it was the feeling of like a motion sickness, which I don't really, in real life, IRL, ever experience. So I returned it, and clearly they were like, yeah, okay, you can return it. I was past the days of return. But the point being, Oculus hasn't got it right. I'm going to try out some other different brands to see what they're doing. But who are you? Are you guys gonna? You're probably not gonna create your own because that's billions of dollars probably development. But who are you hoping to maybe partner with to make that happen? And honestly, it could be the next version of Oculus, or it could be the Apple one that I think will drop, which will be a crazy price point, but I think will happen. What does it look like for Movella, and how are you going to solve that? Because right now, the experience for the individual who's doing the movement, I feel like they're missing a large part of the experience.
I have an Oculus 2 also. I think that you probably also has like a Quest 2.
Yep, Quest 2.
I have the same. I have motion sickness in real life, and I even have it much more in VR live. I also don't do like high movement games because within minutes I'm sick. But what I do a lot is I have meetings in with the Quest. It's simple, meetups, meetings like this, and then it's fine for me. And like you said, it doesn't. It shouldn't be more than like an hour, because then it just drains my brain. That's what's happening, because there's so much information around you that you have to absorb, and your brain understands that it's not real, I guess. So it's for me, it's really drowning. And that's why I always say, I'm talking about the metaverse. And somehow the metaverse is connected to this VR. And people are saying, in a few years, we will be like the Ready Player One movie. Everyone will be with headgears on all day. I don't think that's true. I'm sure it's not true, because it's, like you said, it's not comfortable. People don't want to have like a gear on every minute of the day. So I'm thinking it will be like a combination. Maybe there's VR experiences when when it brings value to have VR in it, and others, it can be just your desktop, it can be your phone, it can be AR, and I think AR is going to be very dominant in the metaverse, because that's there where the combination actually is, where you can just still see the real world, and then digital stuff is added to it. I don't know if you read it, but I'm trying to visualize a day in the metaverse through text. So I give you what happens if the metaverse was here, and how would that look like? And one of the examples that I give is that I would walk the dog. I would have an AR headset on. I would walk the dog outside. I would call my friend, and then he would walk with me virtually. He would be next to me while I'm walking the dog, and then we would conversate, just like we would conversate, walking the dog together. It's a different kind of communication. This person is there, but it doesn't have to be, at my place. And that can, this kind of stuff will happen. You go maybe to a theme park, and there will be like virtual experiences connected with real experiences. Stuff like this, that would happen. But I don't think it will be dominant by VR. There's, of course, games that will be played. There's, of course, meetings that will take place. But that's about it. And then, then you go to your next thing, and then it's on the phone, and then you go just like we do now, actually. So that's where I kind of doze off where the question was, actually. But I think we touched on it.
Yeah, no, I think that's great. And I love the analogy of you're walking your dog and you have your AirPods in, for example, your headphones, and you're talking to your friend. Well, instead of doing that and just kind of talking out into the world as you walk around, you would have the AR glasses, and then you'd be able to look, and your friend would be walking next to you. That to me is actually, once the VR goggles didn't work out, and it's not because my eyesight, they haven't perfected the actual hardware yet. I love the experience up until that point, which was the real bummer to have to return. But I think my next thing is looking at AR glasses, because I've been seeing some videos too of AR glasses, and it looks really cool. The idea of having the glasses on and then having the keyboard and being able to kind of use it in the air is really attractive to me as someone who kind of lives remotely. And so if I can cut down on the physical hardware I have to have and replace that with an AR situation or an MR, some kind of a mixed reality maybe, that would be great. And you touched upon Ready Player One, and I just did an episode on it, so I'll show you right now. It'll be on camera, but I got these in the mail the other day. So Ready Player One, and then this is Ready Player Two, which Ready Player Two, the movie is coming out. They're working on it. I'm not sure exactly when it will come out, but I've been reading that they're working on it. So yeah, I think way in the future, when the tech is completely resolved, so you can be comfortably in a VR experience, maybe it would work. But it seems like we're at Duck Hunter, right, for VR, and we'll
Yeah.
eventually get to Fortnite. It's gonna take 15 years, maybe less, honestly, with technology the way it's going. But I want to transition a little bit and talk about motion printing, because
Hmm.
when you explained motion printing, and I heard you do this on some other content you shared that you've been a part of, it made perfect sense to me as someone who is very much into my two big passions are kind of blockchain, metaverse, NFTs, Web3. But on the other side is soccer, the world sport, which is another whole language, kind of like Web3 is. And if you watch soccer or any sport really, but soccer specifically, due to how big the field is and how much running that is actually going on in different cuts, I can look at a player, look at a screen, and I don't even need to focus. And I know exactly who that player is by how they're moving, the touches they're taking on the ball, where they're positioned, the way that they've turned, the way that they did this dribble. And I don't need, my brain tells me that by looking at a field. If I watch, if I were to watch Manchester United versus Real Madrid, we're just use two very famous soccer brands. My brain
Yeah,
already tells me who each player is based on my experience
yeah.
of having watched so many hours. And so maybe you could speak more on motion printing. And then also, my question is, will that play a part in our digital identity in the metaverse?
Yeah, so for sure. And you already gave a good example, because this is also, when I explain the motion print, so the motion print is derived from, the fingerprint, and that's actually exactly why what you talked about. So the most people that you know already, how they walk. Maybe not if you imagine it, but if this person comes to you, down the hall, you can actually hear, okay, this is my friend coming up, by his tread or by the way he walks. So and when you see somebody walking, you can also tell if or how or who that is. We actually did a test on this also internally in our company. So we have a lot of data from a lot of people, within the company, because everybody wears, the suits now and then. And we had actually one guy who was leaving, and he was into this data a lot. So he was leaving the company, and then we made like 10, 15 videos from different people, data. We took data from them, and then we showed the data to him. And, he picked like 80, 90% of them. He knew who it was. Like, okay, this is Remco, this is Jack, this is Chantal, he knew, because he just looked at, the avatar, doing a little walk. But that's how typical people walk. And that's how unique that is. And if this uniqueness, that's why, motion print, fingerprint, this uniqueness can also be transferred to you as an individual in the metaverse. So if you motion capture somebody, or you, maybe Jared, we motion capture you, you do like, I don't know, 10 minutes of things, doing like walking, jumping, sitting down, running, doing some squats, maybe pick something up, there's all kinds of motion, all kinds of data that you then record. Then you store that, and you could even do a layer of AI over it, and then you would have your unique motion print. And this motion print can be applied to your avatar, and this avatar just moves just like you in the metaverse. When I would talk to you in your digital avatar, it would have the same, like you're sitting now, in your typical way, you have like your Atlas kind of motion, and then it would be the same. There's I also talked to a guy. I don't know what ethnically he was, but he said my people do a lot of head shaking, a typical head shaking. I can't remember what it was. But he said there's a typical head shaking. So if you would motion capture me, that would for sure be in my way of talking. And it would be so typical to me and my people, because you don't see it in other people. So this is what will bring, this extra layer of communication to the metaverse, which you don't have now. And I think that's also where the metaverse is lacking, because if I go to Decentraland or Sandbox, I meet, people. And it's fun, you chat with each other, and it's fine. But I feel you will not get that personal connection, because there's still this boundary, this digital boundary between the two persons. And once additions of communications, layerings, go on top of it. That can be motion, that can be emotion. You're talking about headgear. Then it gets better and more personal. There's also in movie, there's this thing that's called Uncanny Valley. I don't know if you heard of it, but it's about, at some point, it is, if you see the screen and you see a digital character, and it's so close to being your reality, it's kind of awkward. There was this film, I think it's like Beowulf,
Mhm.
It was fully digital, but
Yeah.
it was, you could see it's not digital, but it's almost there. And it's like a really weird experience for a human to see it, because it's like, am I looking at real or not? And that's the uncanny valley. So you can be, over it when it's getting better, and you can be under it. So, and I think this is also going to happen with avatars in the metaverse. There's going to be, how real do you want to get it, and how real do you want to get this communication going? And this is where we are progressing, and this is where, a lot of work needs to be done. And this is about, technology for avatars, motion, but it's also about interoperability. How easy can you take one item from a platform to the other platform? So there's a lot of things that we need to talk about before we can actually talk about a metaverse.
That's my feeling. The interoperability, I think, is one of the biggest things right now because even getting, if we're just going to look at like the technical aspect of NFTs in general, even if you just get them on Ethereum, can be tough to move. I minted something on Ethereum through Polygon, and I've had problems trying to send it to a friend. It was actually a gift. It was for my buddy's birthday, and I've had massive issues trying to send it to him. And so now it's just a joke. It's like, all right, I bought you a present, but it lives in my digital wallet, but you know it's yours, but I can't figure out right now how to send it to you. And so I probably just need to go down some YouTube rabbit hole or enlist someone to like actually sit down with me and kind of look at it, figure out the Etherscan and figure out how it works. But never mind if you have an NFT or you have a digital asset that's on Solana and you have one on Ethereum and we're trying to make a, make an exchange. It's almost,
Hmm.
easier for me to go all the way over to Holland, meet up with you and give you my iPhone for your old Android, or it would seem
Yeah.
at least at least it's theoretically easier for us to wrap our mind around what that looks like rather than being like, okay, well, how are we going to do this? Because that value is different than this. So I think interoperability is something that's it's a barrier for expansion, and it's actually where when I look at cryptocurrency from an investment standpoint, it's really where I'm trying to think about putting money in these places because you're going to need these types of solutions to make the thing a lot more fluid. The thing being Web3, the metaverse,
Hmm.
etc. And going back to Movella a little bit, so we've talked about the entertainment, we've talked about how it's influencing the movies and the video games. I want to focus on the video games for 1 second. I want to ask because it's becoming so realistic, is there a situation in the future where instead of Remco and I sitting down to watch the World Cup, we're going to have the Super World Cup where Pele is going to be there, Maradona is going to be there, Messi will be there, Ronaldo will be there, Cruyff will be there. All of the greats. Or you'll even have women as well, Mia Hamm, Marta. Like we'll have all people playing because we will have captured their emotion or have an understanding of their emotion, and we can kind of play it out with some AI or some algorithmic thing. Do you think that that is a situation moving forward because I was seeing the other day, it was like this NFT collection where if you buy into them, they'll make you eternal and they'll record your voice. And maybe you shared it, but I believe I saw it on Instagram and I can share this with you later. But it was kind of like, it's kind of creepy, right? It's a Black Mirror episode, literally from
Yeah.
Netflix, right? Where you're going to incarnate someone's soul and then you get to interact with them forever, even if it's just in an avatar or digital, or like you said, you know, so and so passed away, but I can still go with them to walk my dog. Is everything I just said crazy? Are we going to get there? Because once you can capture someone's voice, their
Hmm.
motion, their facial expressions, you're getting to the very unique aspects of the being.
Well, I think we're gonna get there at some point. And I remember this Black Mirror episode where there's like, I think like 55 minutes of the show. You see some youngsters having a really great time, and then it seems that it's all people that are reliving their youth, and then in the end they die, and then their youth goes on, in this metaverse almost kind of world. um, and I think it's all possible because to be honest, if, like I said, now I was talking about, if I have 10 minutes with you and I get you in the suit, I can already make a motion print of your personality. What if if I would do it like, I don't know, a day or maybe 2 days, and take a celebrity or take a football greatness and do it. it will be, we will have all this motion and all these special moves and, all these signature moves. We will have it. And then, it could be, we can make it forever. And you could make games out of it. You can make, I don't know, you can make films with it. You can do anything. But of course, there's also this, there's a part of privacy and a part of copyright attached to it. You can capture somebody, but, what are you allowed to do with it afterwards? And who is the owner of this? I don't know the answer at this point, and I think that's also something that needs to be, sought out for the future. So who's owning what, and what, where can now it's already a big issue to have privacy, or to a privacy issue about data that you do on the internet. Well, what if you add motion to it? What if you add your voice to it? What if you add your expression to it, which is also unique? So there's more to explore. And then interoperability is also a part of it. And I think there, you can take that in little steps. The end goal is to be in a virtual world. You buy an NFT, shoes, these crypto Nikes. You buy these shoes and you go to Fortnite. I don't know, you go to Decentraland, you go to Sandbox, you go to Minecraft. I don't know where you go, and you can wear your shoes. But this is like, the end goal. It doesn't happen soon. And I think, it takes maybe 5 to 10 years before we even get there. But in the meantime, small steps can be taken. I read that Roblox just had they made their own version of interoperability for their own platform. So if you buy something with Roblox, you can wear it on any avatar you have, because they have, small avatars, big avatar, wide, they can do anything with the avatars. But you can, buy a shirt and you can wear it on any of them. And you can also, design them yourself. But I think that is where it's going in the end. And, now we need to make all these little steps to get there before we can make the end goal step, which will take a long time. And for capturing face, and voice, the technology is there. It's not, that's not the boundary. I think it's the imagination that's the boundary in the end. And also, there's also ethics involved. Like, okay, how do you want, yourself to be forever? I don't know. And you mentioned Cruyff, who's already passed away. Does the family want it? Is it how do we want to bring this guy to life, like Elvis? It's probably easy to bring him back to life. I know they already have a full working version of David Bowie. He's fully digital, and you can sing, you can do anything that you want. But this is something that we want with ourselves, with all of us. But that's a different discussion. But technology-wise, I think we are already on that path.
It's so great to connect with you because all of these things are just like going off in my mind, and I want to take the conversation in so many directions. But obviously, I can't speak for you forever. But the idea of digital IP around your motion is something I don't, I'm assuming that there's probably not a huge legal framework for. So if you're a lawyer and you're listening to this and you're like, oh, what could I really get into? Well, maybe you could write the rules for this, because I think you're totally right. If you all of a sudden come out with this futuristic game that people can gamble and you can say who you're going to pick, and everyone loves Cruyff, obviously like the godfather of the total game, it would seem, I'm sure that it would seem that the family would have a lot of questions to ask themselves in a very wild situation. Yeah, do we really want grandpapa, being in video games forever where people can learn about him? There's probably a good and a bad to that, right? But
Mhm.
thinking about people's IP down to the level of motion is a real fascinating thing, because when I first got on, I'm thinking motion as the unique identifier. So when you go into the metaverse, you obviously have to prove you are who you are through your digital wallet. But maybe another thing is not just like a retina scan from your goggles, but it's also like you have to do a dance move. And I know that that sounds crazy, but I don't think it's that wild, or even just walk on the treadmill for 2 minutes to prove your gait, because everyone's walking style is just different. Anyway, but I want to talk about, we've talked about entertainment, we've talked about sports, and then I want to talk about the health implications of the movement and the motion and the suits. Where does that work, and how are these suits helping people's well-being, their physical and obviously their emotional and mental, but their physical well-being.
Yeah. We talked about Movella, and now we talk mostly about the entertainment side because it's the metaverse. But actually, we have more divisions, segments. So there's the entertainment segment. There's also automation and mobility segment, which is about autonomous vehicles, which is about drones, which is about marine, about boats, about machines in essence, warehousing. So everywhere where a machine moves, we can also add value. We can make it more efficient. So that's one division, and then we have sport or health and sport, and that's because that's also emotion, and we aim to make people's lives better. That can be in health and it can be in sport. It can be about injury prevention. I did running this Sunday. I went for 10-kilometer walk, and we actually did a test there with sensors on the body because this app that we're working on doesn't give on your phone you have apps. You're saying, okay, you did so many kilometers, you have this pace, you have this tread. There's all kinds of data there, but what it doesn't give you is how good are you walking, how healthy are you walking, how balanced are you walking. And there's so much data, coming from sensors that we give that can, bring so much value to injury prevention, because running in particular is a really bad thing for your body. If you keep doing that, and if you walk or if you run in a wrong way. So, and this can be detected. So it can be saying, okay, your balance is too much to the left or whatever, or your knee is bouncing too hard. There's all kinds of indicators. So that's where we can help. But it's also in warehousing. You've heard Amazon. There's a lot of talk about people getting hurt, long-term hurt. There's so much pressure on delivering on time. So much has to be done. So you can also measure people behind their workspace. How healthy are they actually working? Are they, using their hands too high, too often? Are they bending too often, forwards or backwards? And that is unhealthy. And you can all map that, and you can all say, okay, this work spot is not healthy. It needs to change. And you can also, be proactive on this. And if you design a work spot, you can already make it digital and see, let's see how this works in digital life, and if you already, if it's wrong or not. I know of instances that they made a car, and there was there was like a button in the trunk, and they couldn't reach it, and they so it was designed digital like this, and then they made a digital puppet, try it, and then they noticed, oh, this puppet can never reach it. So thank God that they did it digitally, and they didn't produce it yet. But this little stuff can happen. And we see that a lot. There's a lot of traction going on in it's industry 4.0, where factory lines, but also regular work is being analyzed in a digital way to make it healthier and easier. So we can work longer, and we can enjoy our retirement without being fully broken up. So it's a really cool place to be in. So it's not just entertainment, it's also about sport, and sport can also be about injury prevention, but can also be about performance bettering, of course. We have skaters, soccer, you see it. There's a lot of sports that gain from analytics from motion. We just did a story about a ski jumper who won gold during the Olympics, and his skiing jump was being analyzed, and he probably, hopefully, because of us, he got a gold medal. Stuff like this. So it's a really interesting space to be in.
I was thinking as you were talking about the running, especially, and I saw that you did the 10K. I think I saw it on LinkedIn. I must have seen it where you posted a photo. And it made me think of Iliad, I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing his name right, Iliad Kipchoge, the guy who did the 2-hour marathon in under 2 hours. And I believe he did it in Brussels. I could be wrong, but it'd be fascinating to have put the suit on him and then even look at his biomechanic and say, hey, you can get even more efficient. So I was thinking about that's where like my mind went with the running and increasing efficiency with the performance athletics. And then on the health side, I think that the thing that comes to mind when I think about that is that could probably help everyone because everyone needs help because either their ankles, their knees, their hips, or their shoulders
Hmm.
are messed up. And if you're listening to this, you're like, oh, yeah, that's probably right. And some of us have
Yeah.
more than one of those things. And then it will throw off eventually over the long term. You'll get the secondary injuries and whatever. So the real interest I have with this is how do I get it? At what point does this suit become retail ready? And obviously, you guys are going to have to manufacture these, and that's a huge manufacturing, distribution, operation. You're getting into a different realm, but I would assume the long term would be well, let's get one of these in as many houses as we can in the world and allow people to engage either in a virtual space or just have it because they're doing rehab. I could see as my father had a knee replacement a couple years ago, but if he had had one of these suits and could have sent that data in real time to the surgeon, I feel like they would have been able to have a really, really more intimate conversation about his recovery. So, when am I going to be able to go online and under a reasonable price point say, "Hey, I'm excited to get one of these suits. Let me get the Xsens. That's what I want for Christmas."
Well, we're not there yet, for sure. If you talk about, our system, what we now sell, both for the sport, the health, and the entertainment, is really a professional kind of suit. So we're talking about an investment of at least 10K before you get this, and that's due to all the sensors that are in it. It's like 17 sensors, and all sensors have they have these little chips, and chips are expensive at this moment, and they're hard to get. So that's one. And then next to it, what our core is actually is not this hardware. I couldn't make it, but if you're smart, you could make hardware like we do, at least the chips and the sensors. But the actual value that we put into it is all the algorithms that we have. And that's like 75% of our company is working on all these algorithms, because it's really hard to get all these little bits of data getting in and make something sensible out of it. That is the real value that we add to our hardware, because that's bright minds that really work on this. And if you want to get that to a customer or a consumer level, it will take time. It just takes time, and we're not at this stage yet. The hardware isn't cheap enough to get there, even though if we wanted to, because we would, of course. This is like a typical thing that you would want to get in the consumer grade at some point, because it really brings value. And also one of our things is we want to bring meaning to movement as Movella. And that will be, our ultimate goal, to make lives better, to make lives healthier. But yeah, at this point, it's not possible, with all the pricing point. And at some point, I can see it happening. And there's also what you said with your father. What you see is regular physiotherapists. They can buy a suit and they can come to your house. Instead of you coming to them, they take their briefcase with the suit. They come to you. You put on the suit, or your father. They walk and said, okay, well, compared to your last walk, you're doing better or worse. There's something that we need to work on, and this can already be done. You don't have to own a suit, to do this kind of therapy. So that is already happening. And for running, we have little sensors, and these are kind of cheaper already and not consumer grade. But if you are into athletics, it's doable. And for running, you could do it. We don't develop these apps ourselves. It's companies that develop them, for the market. And that is already happening. That's already there. Yeah, and at some point, I hope it also will be at the consumer level.
I believe I read on one of your LinkedIn posts and I'll give you a minute. In a minute, I'll give you a chance to shout out your LinkedIn so people can go and follow you because I think you're putting up great content and it's amazing. And one of the things I think more recently you had talked about was immersive storytelling. And how does Movella play a part in that? And also, this could just be you speaking as Remco. What does
Uh,
that look like? And the context of my question is that I had gotten the Oculus to start doing podcasts in the virtual environment. I wanted to say, all right, Remco, you throw on your Quest 2, I'll throw on my Quest 2. Let's go meet. Let's walk around a park, and then we'll have the video of us literally walking with our audios for YouTube or to share it in a video. And then we'll have the audio for, podcast platforms. So what does for you, the future of immersive storytelling, and how does Movella add into that?
Well, it's interesting. I think so. What we do as Movella, we power, we enable creators to be creative, with our technology, without thinking about technology. Like you said, you want to wear your headset, you want to do your thing, and you don't want to think about, all the rest. And I think that's where it's going. And I think in the metaverse, like you said, all these new types of creativity are bubbling. People are thinking about how can I make, how can I bring, something valuable to life in the metaverse, because that's also the essence of the metaverse, I think. It's not about making our life digital. We can do that. We can make a digital shop, and buy things there. But, why? Then I would rather go to the Champs-Élysées than, walk in a digital Champs-Élysées. It should have a different experience, a new experience. Why should I want to go to, maybe I just want to go to Pluto and, buy something there because it's more fun. I would never go there probably. So, let's do it in a metaverse. And this is where it's going to really change. And this is where, it's also progressing, because I feel we're still trying to make, we are pushing Web 2 into Web 3 and then adding like a 3D layer over it. It's like Web 2 plus 3D. But there should be so much more. There should be so much more we could do with all this technology that we now have at hand. And that's where the real challenge is. And I think we're still at the beginning. There's so much to explore. And I'm trying with my stories about, a day in the metaverse, I'm trying to see, what could it be? Like I said, walking the dog with your friend next to you, having, a job interview in, your own CV. Your CV is not, a piece of paper, but your CV is like, a 3D environment where you can walk through your experience, like, okay, this is what I made, and you can take them by the hand, like a different experience, and that you can really show your motion print, you can show your personality in a more interactive way. I would love to do job interviews in a way like this. I think it would be much more effective than we do now. So stuff like this needs to evolve, and we need to think about how can this really make our lives better instead of make our lives 3D. And I think it's the same with storytelling. I see people, or I see they try to do storytelling in VR. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't, because it's too much. It's people don't know where to go. It's you really have to try and make the experience user based instead of content based. You have to think about what the user does, because they can go anywhere instead of like, behind the screen, you can just go straight and you can boundary them. But in VR, it's really hard to boundary them. So that's where the challenge is. And it's the same what I said. So I don't think, VR is going to be dominant. It's a mixture of things. And, AR, well, we've already seen Pokemon Go, which is like the start of things. And I'm sure, this is going to lead to more and more, where you go to dinner and, the menu isn't, like a piece of paper, but it's just in front of you. And, there's reviews and stuff like this. It doesn't have to be overwhelming, because I don't know if you've seen it, but there's like a video. It's from, I don't know, like 5 years back already, maybe even more. But somebody made like a metaverse video, and it was walking through maybe it was Tokyo, and it was just madness. There was like VR, AR things everywhere. It was exploding. It was like watching a Looney Tunes episode, and everything was blowing up. And that's too much. There's a space in between where it adds value, where it's interesting, and there's a space where it gets too much. And I think that's where we're going. It just takes time.
I haven't seen that video. I will find that video though, because I can see what you described in my mind was like if you walk through New York Times Square today, it is so overwhelming. There's all these bright lights, and then there's all these grown human adults that are walking around in puppet costumes trying to get you to give them $1 so you can take a selfie with them. And it's just a cacophony of just chaos. It is like the most organized or unorganized chaos you can possibly imagine, at least on this side of the pond. So I'll look for that video, because I think figuring out that balance, and you talked about the valley, is super important. So as a final thing, do you want to shout out where people can find you? I've only found you on LinkedIn, but you may also be active on Twitter or other places where you're creating content or, putting your daily stories out about the metaverse.
I'm dominantly on LinkedIn, and I also post on LinkedIn on Twitter, but it's actually the LinkedIn post that I post on Twitter. so it's like a vicious circle. No, you can find me on LinkedIn, Remco Sikkema. I post about Web3, Metaverse, and NFTs. There's all kinds of stories. There's also personal stories, just like my running story from yesterday. So there's a bunch of information that you will find. Please connect with me, and let's have a discussion. I love meeting new people in this space. So yeah, it will be fun.
Absolutely. I will leave all of this information in the notes, no matter where you're listening to this, on the podcast or if it's on YouTube. And you can find Remco Sikkema on LinkedIn. Remco, thanks so much for joining us, and we'll be in touch.
Thanks, was a blast.
Thanks for listening to this episode, and be sure to follow Remco on LinkedIn at Remco Sikkema. That's RemcoSikkema. And as a footnote to this episode, I'd like to clarify two things. First, the NFT project I mentioned that had a technical problem and lost 24 million, well, it was actually 34 million. And secondly, Remco confirmed that the Xsens suit's price tag is not 10,000, but actually 3,500. And if you're interested in acquiring one, please reach out to Remco on LinkedIn for more information. Be sure to follow us on social media at More Than Blockchain, and please subscribe to the podcast wherever you're listening. And if you've enjoyed the episode, please consider sharing the link with a friend, colleague, or family member via a text, DM, or email. Thanks again for listening, and I'll see you next time.